Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is a story about dealing with scarcity. And of course, scarcity it needs to be dealt with because we all want to meet the goals of greater individual or societal welfare and happiness. And we're dealing with the concept of a cost right now. That rule number three, that every choice that is made has a cost. But there are all kinds of different types of costs out there. So let's talk about what is the cost of actually protecting the environment, since climate change is such a big issue right now. Well, some common answers are it costs nothing and you pay nothing, and because your actions are free, and it's not like when you do something, you pay money towards climate change. And that is a completely wrong answer, because in economics, as we already know, there is no such thing as free. Milton Friedman, will you please tap the sign? Thank you very much. There is no such thing as a free lunch, says economist Milton Friedman. There is no free. So some other things we'll get is like millions of dollars in government funding for dealing with alternative energy or subsidizing solar or wind or better power grids, higher prices on gas and trash and pollution and all these kinds of different things. Well, this is true. These are types of costs, but they all involve money, and therefore they are considered explicit costs. No, we're talking about different types of costs that are much harder to measure. In fact, you in this section have some of the hardest costs to measure. In economics, we have a saying that is, there is no solutions, only trade offs. You cannot get rid of scarcity. Remember that. You're only going to trade it off to something else. Scarcity will go from here to here. Why? Because scarcity is persistent and always happens. And a trade off is simply what you sacrificed when you made a decision, otherwise known as a cost. So if you have a decision between choice A and choice B, and you go through choice A, you cannot do choice B. It is a sacrifice you made for walking into choice A. But what if you are not this person? What if there is a choice A and choice B, but this person making the choice is not you, it is someone else. And yet their choice to walk through door A or door B actually makes you sad Eeyore. All right. What if the choice that is made up here actually impacts you down here, and you weren't a part of this choice whatsoever? Now, this is really important because this is all about what's going on in terms of climate change. Okay. We have all these issues that are happening, and most of them are actually not a result of your choice. So, wildfire, smog, floods, drought, trash, heat waves, blizzards, erosions, these are all impacts of climate change. Are these results of your choices? Like, are these happening because you do things? And the answer is sort of, but not really. You directly, for the most part, you are not creating wildfires and smog and floods and drought and trash and heat waves and blizzards and erosion. Are there things that you're doing that are contributing to them? Yes, but very small. You alone can't do these things. The thing is, everybody else is thinking the same thing, that look, I can just go do things I want to do, and I'm not going to worry about it because I'm not the main driver of the problem. And in economics, we have a name for this. The name is the free rider, a free rider problem. And a free rider is when somebody basically overuses a resource, and they do it because they don't really have to pay for it in terms of a cost. So when you talk about things like wildfires come from primarily different kinds of pollution, like driving your car. Well, driving your car, on its own is not causing the wildfires, but when everybody drives the car, they make the choice to drive a car, then the temperature of the planet goes up eventually over long periods of time, thus creating greater wildfires and droughts and smog and everything else. And look, you're actually getting a consequence of a choice that other people make. But what other people are seeing is that somebody else probably needs to bear the cost of this. Like people that are saying, oh, this group over here, they're really the cause of climate change. And so you need to take care of them. And so what it kind of psychologically does to that person and says, and I don't really need to change the way I do things because I'm not the main driver of the problem. And they become what is known as a free rider. And essentially, what we were talking about is, you know, you are getting the results of other people's choices through these things, but you're also kind of part of the problem, also. And These results over here are known as externalities. They are choices that are being made by a lot of different people, and you're being impacted by those choices. So, an externality, which can be positive and negative, is a cost or benefit that affects a group of people that are not a part of the economic exchange. They are a third party over here. Somebody over here walks through door A or door B, and over here, somebody that's totally unrelated is actually given a consequence of the choice that is made. So essentially, this is a group that has no control over how the cost or benefit was created. You alone don't create climate change. You contribute to it in a little tiny minute amount, but there's so many people on the planet that are thinking like that, that eventually, guess what? Externality. Everybody's choices are impacting you. Right? So these externalities here, wildfire, smog, floods, drought, trash, heat waves, blizzards, and erosion, actually come from other people's choices primarily. But you bear some of the consequences of those choices. Here are some other common externalities. Pollution obviously is a negative. You don't create the pollution for the most part, but you suffer from it. Here's some positive externality. When somebody builds a university, everybody really gets a lot of benefit from that. Why? Because smarter people actually end up, more skilled people end up creating a better society overall. That's not only that, I mean, you get things like vaccines that come out of people that are educated and come out of universities or Google or these different things that make life better. Immunization. The point of immunization, believe it or not, is not to get you immunized so you don't get a disease. The point of immunization is to get you immunized so you don't give somebody else a disease. Because the more people that get immunized, the less likely you're going to get a disease. By the way, COVID. Most people got COVID regardless of political party up until vaccinations. Then all of a sudden, Democratic states had far less COVID cases than Republican states because Republican states didn't want to take the vaccine. And the whole thing was is that the more people that took the vaccine, the less likely you were going to suffer significant hospitalization or negative impacts from COVID. Building a business has positive externalities. Of course, more people have income. There's more taxes that are being paid. People that work actually feel like their lives are worth more. They're worth something because they're doing like have a purpose. They have all kinds of positive externalities of the community, like things like banning plastic bags. At first, they thought that was a positive externality. Then they came to find that's a negative externality because landfills. It takes longer for non-plastic bags to actually decompose in landfills, and it actually takes more energy to produce non-plastic bags in the first place. Okay, so that's actually a negative externality. Immigration, overall positive externality. Immigrants bring in hard work, they do jobs that other people don't want to do. But what it does is that immigration is shown, except for college dropouts, to actually raise incomes of every other income demographic. And that's because they're choosing to do other kinds of jobs that people don't want to do. They also become entrepreneurs, and of course that increases your income overall over time. Some Governments, what should they do about externalities? Well, you should increase the benefit of positive externalities and you should increase the cost of negative externalities. Simple. Of course, the problem is that when we have the problem of scarcity, which is unlimited wants, limited resources, it's not that simple at all because everybody has different values. And so everybody's ideas of what a positive and negative externality are, or even more importantly, how to deal with positive and negative externalities, they're always all different. So these are the biggest impacts of climate change: children, fossil fuels, transportation, construction, meat, the burning of wood and agriculture, the production of metal and concrete, deforestation, gas flaring, and trash. There are things here that we can obviously deal with by making choices. But when we're dealing with externalities, we need to take a look at a couple things. Number one, which impact here has the greatest negative externality? Means that when one of these things occurs, a child or burning fossil fuels or driving a car, which has the greatest external impact to parties not having to do with those choices. But we can't just stay with that. Which impacts have the greatest positive externalities? Because all these things, even when you look at it, you can't think of it as there's good and evil. No, they have costs and benefits. Like deforestation, you can say, is deforestation bad? Yeah. Does it have benefits? Yeah, it does. Because people that are actually cutting logs are getting income. People that use the tools to cut the logs, that make the tools, that make the parts to the tools, they are actually getting income. There are benefits, and you can't just sit there and flat out deny it. Now, if you want to say, okay, well, which this is the better, the more rational way to look at it is which ones of these have actually super negative and super positive externalities. And then you focus on maybe eliminating those and really focusing on the ones that have the greatest negative externalities. So if we look at positive externalities, children. Children, yes, they bring impacts to climate change. For every time somebody is born, that consumes resources, but it also can create awesome things. They could be the next great inventors of cancer vaccines and take us to Mars and create massive AI projects and new power grids. So children actually have really, really positive externalities too. Construction, of course, building bridges and buildings and all these schools and all these things, universities, those have positive externalities. So I don't know, do you want to really put money towards changing these things or changing them for the negative and getting rid of them? Which have the negative, really, you know, greatest negative externalities or the least positive externalities? Probably deforestation. That forests and ecosystems thriving on the planet are probably super important. And if you got rid of deforestation, it probably have a significant greater positive externalities if we got rid of deforestation and trash. Yes, so you're going to have people at landfills and maybe truck drivers at waste companies not do well because of less trash, but you're probably going to do a massive amount of good for the environment if you had less trash. The positive externalities would outweigh the negative externalities in any kind of long run, probably even in the short run, right? So an externality is a cost or benefit that affects a group that is not a part of an economic exchange, a third party, and they have no control over how that cost and benefit is created. A very difficult but very important type of cost.